So now today we are going to discuss about the exception hierarchy, guys. Okay. So now exception hierarchy we'll see now. So now we will see what is the exception hierarchy. After that we will see what is an exception, what is an error. Okay. So everything we will see in detail, guys. So now in the exception hierarchy, let me write. So for that, for exception hierarchy classes, see the exception classes, right? So who provided these exception classes? Java people.
Yeah.
Understand? Right? So the list of exception classes they provided, guys. Right? All these, what is the root class for all these exception classes, right? So throwable is the root class for all the exception. Right? Throwable. Right? So this is the root class for all the exception hierarchy, guys. So now the throwable again it divided into two types, guys. The throwable again divided into two types. Okay. So now let me write here. The first one is exception. The second one is here error. Okay. So the throwable is the root class for all the exception hierarchy classes, right? Again, throwable have two immediate child classes. One is what, guys? Exception class. Another one is what? Error. Okay. Now, again, exception, right? No. Again, exception, right? So for the exception class, again we have what, guys? Child classes. So what is the child class for exception class? Immediate child class for exception class. Okay. So runtime exception. Runtime exception. These are what, guys? Classes. Understand? Who provided these classes?
Java people.
Java people provided. Okay. So runtime exception is what? Child class for exception class. Okay. Now, so the for runtime exception, we have several child classes. For runtime exception, we have what? Several child classes. So what are those? The first one, okay. So the first one, arithmetic exception. Okay. Arithmetic exception. Arithmetic, right? Arithmetic exception. Fine. So next one, next one we have null pointer exception. Null point exception. The next one, class cast exception. Class cast exception. Right? These are what, guys? Child classes for runtime exception. Okay. So next one we have one more child class, index out of bound exception. Index out of bounds exception. For index out of bound exception, we have two more child classes, guys. For this, we have two child classes. One is okay. One is string index out of bound exception. String index out of bounds exception. The another one is array index out of bound exception. Array index out of bound. Yeah, out of bounds, right? Exception. These are what, guys? Child classes for index out of bound exception. Okay. So in the same way, we have one more child class for runtime exception. One more child class for runtime exception. What is that? Illegal argument exception. Illegal argument. Illegal argument exception. Again, for illegal argument exception, we have one child class. What is that child class? Number format exception. Number format exception. Okay. Next one, we have one more child class for runtime exception. Okay. Illegal state exception. Illegal state exception. For illegal state exception, we have child classes. The first one, illegal thread state exception. Illegal thread state exception. Okay. Illegal thread state exception. The other one, illegal monitor state exception. Illegal monitor state exception. Okay, so these are what, guys? Child classes for illegal state exception. Okay, so like this we have what? Okay, so like this we have, okay, we have different etc child classes for runtime exception. So these are main classes, okay, main exception classes what we are going to discuss, guys. Clear? So fine. So now these are what for exception classes. These are what for exception classes. These are what, guys? Child classes, right? So runtime exception is what? Immediate child class for exception class. In the same way, we have one more child class for exception. So what is the child class, guys? Okay, IO exception. Input output exception. Okay, IO exception. Right. For IO exception, again we have what, guys? Child classes. What are those child classes? The first one, okay, the first one, end of the file exception. End of the file exception, EOF, okay? End of the file exception. And next one, file not found exception. File not found exception. Okay. So next one, we have one more subclass for IO exception, interrupted IO exception. Interrupted IO exception. These are what, guys? Child classes for IO exception, right? The same way, we have one more child class for exception is, okay, interrupted exception. What is that, guys? Interrupted exception. Interrupted exception. This is what child class for exception. Okay. In the same way, we have one more exception. I'm writing directly here, guys. Servlet exception. Servlet exception. Okay. So these are what. So like this, we have what, guys? Okay. etc. etc. We have few more child classes, guys. Okay. So these are what direct child classes for exception class. See, what is the root class for all the exception hierarchy? Throwable, right? Again, throwable has, okay, two child classes. What are those? The first one is exception class. Another one is error class. Okay. Now, again, exception class has what, guys? Exception class has, again, child classes. What are those child classes? The first child class, runtime exception. This is what immediate child class for exception class. And another one is IO exception, right? And another one is servlet exception. Okay. And another one is interrupted exception. These are what, guys? Child classes for exception class, right? Again, the runtime exception has what, guys? Few more child classes. Arithmetic exception and null pointer exception. Okay. And class cast exception. Okay, guys. Class cast exception and index out of bounds exception. Index out of bound exception. So again, index out of bound exception has two child classes. One is string out of bound exception. Another one is array index out of bound exception. Okay. And for runtime exception, we have one more child class. What is that, guys? Illegal argument exception. For illegal argument exception, we have one more child class. What is that one, guys? Number format exception. Understand? Again, for runtime exception, we have one more child class called illegal state of exception. Illegal state exception. For illegal state exception, we have two more child classes. One is illegal thread state exception, and another one is illegal monitor state exception. Understand, guys? Like this, we have what different child classes, guys. So these are the child classes I have listed, right? So we are using actually commonly we are using these child classes. That's why I have written all these child classes, guys. Okay. Again, IY exception is what child class for exception class. For the IY exception, we have three more child classes. The first one is end of the file exception, and another one is file not found exception, and the other one is interrupted, right? Interrupted IO exception. Okay. Now, so these are the what, guys? Exception class related hierarchy. Okay. So what is the root class for all the exception classes hierarchy, guys? Throwable. Guys, can you hear me?
Yes.
So now, okay, the exception completed. Now we will discuss about error. So we have one more child class, right? For throwable class. What is the other one? error, right? Come on.
Yeah.
Okay. For error, we have for error we have okay VM error, virtual machine VM error. This is what guys child class for okay error class. In the same way, we have one more child class for error, that is linkage error. Linkage error. Okay. The same way we have one more direct child class for error class. Okay. Assertion error. Assertion error. Okay. So now again VM error has okay two more child classes. VM error has what? Two more child classes. Right. Right. The first one is the first child class out of memory error. Out of memory error. And another child class, okay, stack overflow error. Stack overflow error. Okay. Next, linkage error has one more child class, guys. What is that one? Verify error. Okay, verify error. So like this, these are what error related. Okay, these are what guys error related classes. Okay, so like this we have so many guys. Okay, I have listed out here only few things guys. So these are the main things we are going to discuss. Okay, so now tell me, these are what guys exception hierarchy classes, right? So for the exception hierarchy, what is the root class guys? Throwable. Come on, everyone, please respond.
Yes.
What is the root class, guys? Throwable.
Throwable.
Throwable
Throwable.
is the root class for all the exception hierarchy, right? So these classes you have to remember, guys. Okay, this hierarchy also you have to remember. See, throwable is the root class for all the exception hierarchy, right? So all these classes, I mean, who has written these classes, guys?
Java people.
Java people has been written. Okay, it has been written as part of what exception. Okay, Java exception library. Okay, so now, so throwable class can contain what? Two child classes. One is exception class, another one is error class.
Error
Okay,
class.
again exception class has what guys? Child classes. So one is what? Runtime exception, another one is IO exception, another one is servlet exception, another one is interpreted exception. These are what guys? Direct child classes for exception class. Okay. So now we are going to discuss what runtime exception. Again, runtime exception also has okay several child classes. So among them, the first one is what? Arithmetic exception. The second one is null pointer exception. The third one is class cast exception. The other one is index out of bound exception. And another one is illegal argument exception. And another one is illegal state exception. So like that, we have what? Many child classes for runtime exception. Okay. And again, index out of bound exception also we have what? Two child classes. One is string index out of bound exception. Another one is array index out of bound exception. Okay. So now illegal argument exception has also one child class, that is number format exception. Illegal state exception also has two child class. One is illegal thread state exception. Another one is illegal monitor state exception. Right. So now IO exception. For IO exception, we have three more child classes. One is end of file exception, and another one is file not found exception, and another one is interrupted IO exception. Okay. So now these are the what guys? Exception related classes. Now coming to error, right? For error class, we have what? Several child classes. One is VM error, another one is linkage error, and another one is assertion error. These are what guys? Child classes for error class. Okay. Again, VM error has what? Two child class. One is out of memory error. The second one is stack overflow error. And linkage error also we have what? One child class, that is verify error. Okay. Clear everyone?
Okay.
So these are the what guys? Exception hierarchy classes. Okay. Who provided all these classes guys? Java people.
Java.
Okay, as part of J2 SE. Okay, software installation, you will see the library, right? JSE module. As part of JSE module, so you will see all these exception classes. Okay, all these classes who has written? Java people has been written. Okay, so now